Josh Harvey here of Big Red Report and Fox Sports Next, here with Dave Berk, managing editor of SpartanDigest.com. We're going to be breaking down Nebraska, Michigan State this Saturday at 2:30 on ABC. And Dave, right off the bat, I got to ask you, they lose 3 out of 4, and it appears like this team is, kind of their wheels are spinning. And then all of a sudden they knock off ranked Wisconsin. Do you feel like they kind of maybe got back on track during that game?
Well, I don't think it's so much been off track. I think the thing you have to look at is those 3 losses were by a total of 6 points. So they were in all those games. It wasn't like they'd been blown out by anybody. And I think Mark D'Antonio did a great job of keeping them focused going into Wisconsin, knowing that they could knock off Wisconsin by just playing the same type of football they've been playing that they actually saw losses in. And that's what we saw last Saturday, another hard-fought game, low-scoring, defensive game that the Spartans this time got the bounces and won in overtime. So I think this team is better than their record. They very easily could be sitting with a one-loss record. If things would have just bounced a little bit different, maybe one play in each game.
Obviously, Michigan State had its struggles last year as it came into Lincoln, losing 24-3. I'm wondering how much that's been brought up this week, and if there's a revenge factor as the Huskers come to East Lansing.
I've known Mark D'Antonio for a long time. I've never seen him talk about a revenge game. I think they went into Lincoln last year and they got beat. And Mark D'Antonio will tell his team, we went and got beat last year. You got to come out and play your best football. And, if you go back and follow what's happened the last 2 seasons, Mark D'Antonio's teams have always had that one weekend, it seems, towards the end of October, and that they've struggled. They've had that bad game. Last year it was Nebraska. The year before that it was Iowa. Both games were on the road. I think this year a little bit differently because they are at home this year, and I that's why I think I don't think he's looking at that game as far as saying we need to get a revenge win here. I just don't think it's in his DNA.
Junior Andrew Maxwell has had his ups and downs this year, but has been very serviceable, especially as of late. The last 2 games, he's thrown for over 60%. Just talk a little bit about his progression and where do you feel like he's at right now in this offense.
Well, I think Andrew's done a great job. He reminds me a lot of Kirk Cousins in his first year as a full-time starter as he's learning on the job. Because of Kirk, Andrew was not able to get a lot of reps over the last 3 seasons. And the fact that the Spartans were playing and won 11 games the last 2 years didn't allow for Andrew to get a lot of reps. So, he also had some lost time in the spring. So I think he's done better than what most people think he's done, having watched every game he's played this season. And I think you're going to see a continued growth from the young man going forward this season and then into the next 2 years.
Le'Veon Bell is a guy that Nebraska's defense has been talking about all week. He was really somewhat stopped against Michigan and Wisconsin, didn't have his best game. What did Sparty and what did the Wolverines or I should say, what did the Badgers and what did the Wolverines do to somewhat, slow him down?
Well, I think it's been a fact that Bell has been the workhorse for the Spartans all season long. And what teams know is they're going to hand the ball off to number 24. And they've loaded the box, allowed them to go ahead and try running the football. And, Bell's played solid, but not racked up the numbers like we saw in the opener against Boise State or a couple other games earlier in the season. So, plus, you have to look at the offensive line. Michigan State's been fighting injuries. They lost Travis Jackson for the whole rest of the season in the Ohio State game. Fofonode was out prior to the Notre Dame game. And they've had Dan France at the left tackle spot who missed the Michigan game, where Donovan Clark, a redshirt freshman, had to come in and really play his most minutes he's ever played in a college career, getting his first start in an environment like Michigan. So I think it's a combination of things. But, you never know with Bell. He's able to break one at any time.
We're talking with Dave Berk here, managing editor of SpartanDigest.com. This is a game featuring a high-octane offense against a pretty great defense. Nebraska comes in averaging 39 points a game to Michigan State's 15. I got to ask, is this a game that you feel like Michigan State's defense, they have to be at their best to pull out a victory? And do you feel like they've seen an offense like this yet in Nebraska so far on their schedule?
Well, I think if you look at the games they've played, they've played Ohio State to a very close game, and we've seen what Ohio State's offense is capable of doing when it's running full, full bore. So I mean, I don't think I always would take defense over offense when it's going to be a close game, and that's what I expect this Saturday when the Huskers come to town.
Here, let me go. Hold on 1 second. Okay, 3, 2, 1. At this point, Michigan State's 5-4. Do you feel like this is a team that's somewhat frustrated with their record, or do you feel like this is a team at this point that maybe is backed into the corner and still feels like they still have a lot of season left to play?
I think if they would have lost last Saturday to Wisconsin, they would have had their back into the corner. I think Mark D'Antonio has done a great job with the hard schedule they played, the losses they suffered to keep this team going and looking forward. The fact that they're one game from being bowl eligible, despite the losses, I think people kind of underestimate this team right now. But I don't think their back's against the wall. I think they feel that they're a better team than what their record shows and are capable of beating anybody on any given Saturday.
Before we let you go, Dave, your prediction for tomorrow?
Well, I think it's going to be a hard-fought game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair, as we've seen with most Michigan State games this year. So I would not be surprised to see the Spartans win, but it's going to be a very close game, probably a 21-20 game or somewhere in there, and maybe another even overtime game that we could see, because the Spartans have already had 2 and almost had 3 when you look at the Michigan game.
That's Dave Berk, managing editor of Spartan Digest. Dave, thanks so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Anytime, Josh.